Like so many other controversies and headaches nowadays, it all began with a tweet. This one, it started an international feud between China and the NBA, a battle with millions if not billions of dollars at stake. Houston Rockets GM Daryl Morey, he simply tweeted support for the pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong, and people in China couldn't even see it due to the censorship of the internet. That tweet, though, has since been deleted, and a few hours after Morey posted it, Rockets owner Tillman Fertitta, he took to Twitter saying, quote, "Listen, Morey does not speak for the Houston Rockets. Our presence in Tokyo is all about the promotion of the NBA internationally, and we are not a political organization." But that did not go nearly enough for the Chinese government. They flipped out. The Chinese Basketball Association suspended ties with the NBA. State TV said it would stop airing Rockets games. Last year, as a frame of reference, 600 million people in China watched the Rockets. They're hugely popular in China due to Yao Ming, the Chinese star who played in Houston. Basketball is big business in China. 300 million kids, they play the game. NBA estimates there are 500 million fans there. Also, NBA China is estimated to be worth $4 billion, that's with a B, dollars. This whole mess, it started just before the Lakers and the Brooklyn Nets were scheduled to play exhibition games in China. The games, they are being played, but all promotional appearances have been canceled, and so have press conferences. So, net, the players have a gag order. The NBA's tepid response at best is getting hammered by critics. This is how Commissioner Adam Silver responded initially.
We are not apologizing for Daryl exercising his freedom of expression. I regret, again, having communicated directly with many friends in China, that so many people are upset, including millions and millions of our fans. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we come with basketball as an opportunity to sell dreams, sell hopes, and to the extent that we are causing disruption in people's lives and that we are causing disharmony, that's something I regret.
Now, of course, President Trump, he had to weigh in. Why let a crisis go to waste?
I watched the way that, like, Kerr, Popovich, and some of the others were pandering to China, and yet to our own country, it's like they don't respect it. It's like they don't respect it. I said, what a difference. Isn't it sad? It's very sad.
The president there referring to Spurs coach Greg Popovich and Warriors coach Steve Kerr. Trump accusing them of pandering to China, but he's most upset about the fact that they're critical of him. Now, joining me now is a man who says the NBA is choosing profits over freedom. His latest piece in The Nation is called "The NBA is Only Woke When It's Profitable." The NBA sides with their multi-billion-dollar business partners over the human rights of demonstrators being gunned down in Hong Kong. Editor at The Nation, Dave Zirin, he joins us now. And Dave, I got to admit, I was surprised by how the NBA reacted. And it wasn't just the commissioner, and it wasn't even the Rockets ownership here, even some of the players. I saw James Harden, you know, he was ducking and covering when the cameras came around, and some of the Nets as well. They didn't want to touch this thing. It was radioactive. These were the same guys, including the commissioner, who threw Sterling out on his butt when he said what he said about blacks. So to me, I got to admit, I was surprised as how much the league as a whole here has been so apologetic.
Yeah, I was surprised as well. I mean, first and foremost, we have to understand that it's not just the league that's doing billions of dollars in business with China. Many players have endorsement deals in China. The NBA is hugely popular. It's the second largest profit center for the NBA outside the United States. And unlike the NBA's market in the United States, the basketball market in China is growing, not contracting. So that's one issue, that players themselves have their own commercial interests in China. The other issue is, honestly, I just think some of the issues that players have been outspoken on in recent years are issues that speak very closely and intimately to their hearts. Issues of racism in the United States, issues of police violence in the United States. These are issues that they feel like they understand, are conversant in, and affects their communities. I think everybody was caught flat-footed in not understanding some of the basics as far as what's happening in Hong Kong and why it's important to stand with these demonstrators.
But I mentioned two names. I think you're right, Dave, but Popovich and Kerr, They have spoken out on international issues before. They proudly use their platform to go after when they see when they believe the president is enacting presidential. But in this case, even those two guys, who I never guessed, Popovich most notably, that they would have also decided to basically duck and cover on this one. I wouldn't have thought the Spurs coach would have done it, but he did too.
Well, again, I mean, we're talking about an issue where the NBA is so entangled in China and Chinese business that I think everybody was caught off guard by Tweetgate and everything that happened with Daryl Morey. Steve Kerr had a great response the other day where he just spoke about what it's like to be a Donald Trump punching bag, saying that, well, every day, I'm it today, it'll be someone else tomorrow, it'll be someone else the day after that, and the media train goes round and round. So he's got a big picture view of it. But Greg Popovich, somebody who was in the Air Force, somebody who's been outspoken on international issues, you're absolutely right about that. He emphasized, Popovich did, pretty forcefully, that he was happy that Adam Silver supported the rights of free speech and said that people should have the right to say what they want. And so it seems like that's as far as the NBA is willing to go.
To that end, Silva did try to, if not do a 180 on this, at least ameliorate some of the comments that came across as weak at best. To that end, though, David, is the NBA misreading the situation in that they may have a little bit more leverage here, given how popular, as I described, the NBA is in China? At the end of the day, the Chinese want to watch the game.
Well, it's interesting because it's sort of like asking a dog to meow, because the NBA is this multi-billion-dollar global entity. And you're absolutely right. They have leverage as a political entity in this particular case. They just don't really know how to do it. But they are better positioned than, I think, the U.S. State Department to be able to say to China, wait a minute, you want our product, you love our product. We need to have some parameters here, because it's not just about saying to China, you need to lay off the violence against Hong Kong protesters. It's also about saying to China, we're not going to put up with you painting over our signs in Shanghai. We're not going to put up with you not allowing our players to talk to the press. I mean, the NBA really should have canceled this entire thing and not gone on with it, because right now it's looking almost dangerous for the NBA to keep up with this. And it has to be said, the NBA has carefully curated this image as a league that stands for progressive values, that stands for free speech, and they run the risk of undercutting all of that. So they have a strong position to go after China, but they also need to watch their own image that they've curated, because this is not a good look for them relative to how they have behaved in the public sphere over the last several years.
Lack of consistency, to your point about canceling an All-Star game in Charlotte because of the North Carolina vote on same-sex issues, and yet how obsequious they sound in China. But I had a question, which is, if people bother to look why folks are protesting in Hong Kong, I defy the average American to not completely sympathize with them. Their due process is basically being taken away by the powers that be in mainland China. But yet, by all accounts, Yao Ming was livid by what Morey said. Do we know if the people, I'm not talking about the authorities, but the regular citizen in mainland China, do they sympathize with the folks in Hong Kong, or are they also offended by what the NBA or Daryl Morey more specifically said?
Well, Yao Ming is in a very particular case because he's in a position of privilege in China as the head of China basketball. I mean, so he's in almost in an entirely different category than your typical person in China. There is a lot of sympathy on mainland China for what's happening in Hong Kong because, I mean, even with a total media distortion and blackout of what's taking place, the basic issues of which that they have taken the streets for, and the oxygen that they've opened up by doing so, is something that I think we can say has real repercussions. We also can't forget the fact that labor unions are a big part of what's happening in Hong Kong, and that there are efforts to organize inside of China in defiance of the government there. So there's a lot of cross-border solidarity that you have to imagine is impacting consciousness on the mainland of China. And I think the NBA, like you said, could be in this really important position to be able to say, like, we want to speak directly to the Chinese people about not just our product, but about the values that the NBA represents. And they are falling way short of doing that.
Finally, Dave, you think if Silver was given a do-over here, he would have said, you know, I know he would have wished the thing would have all gone away and he could have avoided it entirely, but once Morey put out the tweet, if he got to do that do-over, would he have instead said, we stand with what Daryl Morey says, we believe in equal rights here for all? Or do you think that he was put in an impossible situation, he had no choice but to basically do what he has, which is, you know, say sorry and just pray that it goes away?
Well, there were the first comments from Silver and the second comments from Silver. And the first comments are the ones that I think are going to be etched in history. And that's just crawling through glass to say, I'm sorry to China for offending them. The second comments where Silver stressed the importance of the NBA standing with freedom of speech. I mean, that's further than a lot of multinational corporations go when it comes to China. Actually, to say that we stand for these set of basic freedoms. If Silver had started with that, I think this story could have spun in a very, very different direction.
Dave, great few minutes, and also I suggest people check out Dave Zirin's piece here. It really speaks to the issue. Appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, when we come back, a lot of political news in our viewing area. One of the most influential members of Congress not seeking re-election. Now the scramble to run for Nita Lowey's seat begins. Plus, some prominent Republicans from our region now support impeachment. We'll tell you who they are after this.